Hermione's Song, Chapter 10. Hogsmeade. Harry, Ron, and the Doctor stood watch over the frozen manticore/giant canary until two men dressed in the Ministry of Magic robes popped into existence next to them. The Ministry men scratched their heads in confusion at the creature in the middle of the street. All of the color drained from Ron's face when he recognized the taller, red-headed man.
"Dad, I can explain," he stammered.
Arthur Weasley turned at the sound of his youngest son's voice.
"Ronald, what are you doing here? Didn't they tell you students weren't allowed off the school without an adult escort?" he demanded.
As an afterthought, he added a cheerful,
"Hello, Harry."
Harry, still grinning from the recent victory, replied,
"Hello, Mr. Weasley,"
and shook the elder Weasley's hand.
"We do have an escort,"
he told Arthur while pointing at the Doctor. Taking that as his cue, the Doctor stepped forward and offered his hand. "Hello, I'm the Doctor," he supplied. Ron stepped over to his father's side and whispered,
"He's a black cat, Dad."
Arthur's eyes widened in shock, and he pumped the Doctor's hand energetically.
"Pleasure to meet you, sir,"
he gushed. He was a huge fan of the Jamie Bond's Black Cat book series, written by Captain James Harper, retired. He knew the character in the book was fictional, but it still colored his views on the real black cats. He was also in love with the concept of ores deeply embedding themselves in the Muggle world.
"Sir, we were contacted about a rogue manticore attacking the village. You wouldn't by any chance have seen one about?"
he inquired. Ron tugged on the sleeve of his father's robe and gestured at the gray-hued canary.
"That's him,"
he pointed out. While Arthur creased his brow in confusion, Ron went on.
"The Doctor came up with a plan to use Fred and George's canary creams to turn the manticore into something we could handle. He and I tossed it the candies while Harry hexed it," he explained.
Arthur reached over and mussed his son's hair affectionately.
"Well done, boy, well done," he praised.
His expression changed when he realized how close they would have been in order to get the candies into the beast's mouth. Looking skyward, Arthur pulled off his pointed wizard's cap and ran his fingers through his thinning, red hair.
"For goodness sake, Ron, do you realize how close you came to being killed?" he chastised.
Ron swallowed hard, remembering the encounter vividly.
"Trust me, Dad, that was pretty much on my mind the entire time," he admitted.
Arthur shook his head in dismay.
"To be on the safe side, let's keep this little incident from your mother, shall we?" he suggested. "If she finds out, she may never let you out of the house again," he warned.
Ron gulped loudly again and nodded vigorously.
"Good. Now if you three will excuse us, Bob and I will transport this thing to somewhere a bit more secured," he told them.
Arthur and the other Auror pointed their wands at the manticore/canary, muttered some brief incantations, and disappeared in a flash of blue light, taking the beast with them. The Doctor clapped his hands once and rubbed them together. "Now that's settled. Time for me to go pick up my present from Miss Granger," he told his friends. He spun on his heels and started walking down the street at a brisk pace. Looking up and down the street at the shops closed due to the manticore attack, Harry hurried to catch up with the Doctor.
"Looks like they're all shut up tight, Doctor. We can say you and I went in together on the miniature castle," he offered.
The Doctor smirked at Harry.
"That's a generous offer, Harry, but I'm not getting
Your present at a shop," he said cryptically. They reached the end of the street, and he began fishing around in his pocket for the TARDIS key. Ron squinted his eyes to make sure he was seeing things correctly.
"Police box? What's a police box?"
he asked. Harry shrugged his shoulders in reply. The Doctor put his key in the door and looked over his shoulder, saying, "Be back in a jiffy." He went inside and shut the doors behind him before the young men could follow. The two Gryffindors looked at each other quizzically as strange noises came from the large blue box. The noises became louder as the box faded from sight. London, 1602. A middle-aged man sighed as he put his hands on the middle of his back and stretched. He had been writing for several hours, and the candle on the corner of his desk was nearly burnt out. Familiar noises coming from the courtyard near the inn where he kept a room drew his attention. Smiling like a fool, he shot out of his chair and raced outside. As soon as the Doctor opened the door, he saw his friend leaning against the side of a building in front of him. The man straightened up and walked towards him, his arms held out wide.
"Doctor, what a wonderful surprise to see you,"
the man said.
Of course, it's always a surprise when you show up, but you get my point, he added.
The doctor embraced his friend and then stepped back. Good to see you too, Bill, he replied. He noticed the wordsmith looking over his shoulder at the TARDIS as if he were expecting something. What? The doctor inquired. When no one else came out of the magic box, Bill looked at his friend and gave him a devilish smile. Just seeing if you brought anyone else along with you, he replied. I was so hoping it would be that delicious redhead girl and her handsome boyfriend. I still think I can talk them both into a night of fun and frivolity back in my room, he said suggestively. The doctor was forced to pause as he dealt with that mental image. Right, sorry. Just me this time around, he told the slightly disappointed Bard. I'm actually here to ask a favor of you, the doctor informed him. Bill performed an elaborate, deep bow. For my doctor, anything, he said graciously. He straightened and looked more serious. I mean that, old friend. You have but to name it, and if it is within my power, it will be done. I swear it, he promised. Thank you, Bill, the doctor replied. It's actually a rather small thing. A birthday gift for a friend of mine. She's a big fan of your works, he told him. Bill clapped his friend on the back and led him to the tap room of the inn. You can tell me all about this woman with extraordinary taste over a few pints, he suggested. He saw the doctor look over his shoulder at the TARDIS. Doctor, you have a wondrous conveyance that allows you to travel through time and space. I think you can spare time for a drink or two, he reminded the old alien. Looking like he wasn't totally convinced. I suppose I have time for one drink, he replied hesitantly. Hogsmeade, 1996. Within seconds of the blue box disappearing, the unearthly noises began again. This time, a slight breeze accompanied the sounds and was followed by the police box fading back into sight. What was that all about? Harry wondered, running his hand over the wooden side of the box. The door to the TARDIS opened and the doctor slowly stepped outside, shading his eyes with his hand. He pulled a pair of extremely dark glasses out of his jacket and slipped them on. Why does this system star have to be so bloody bright? He moaned. He slowly locked the door behind him as if every movement brought pain. Are you all right, Doctor? Harry asked, worried for his new friend. The doctor held up a finger to his lips to indicate silence. Not now, Harry. The sound is bouncing around the inside of my skull like an adipose after a cupcake, he croaked. For once, I welcome the silence and whatever is behind them, he muttered. With utmost care, the doctor reached back into his jacket and tried to find a pill bottle he had stashed years ago. He finally found it and had to lift his glasses a bit to read the label. 1 to 2 capsules per day, with a large glass of water, he read aloud. After finally getting the cap off, which he found exceedingly difficult for some reason, he poured out 4 pills into his hand and looked around desperately for something to drink. Harry pulled out his wand and whispered, Accio aquas! A goatskin flask full of water flew to his outstretched hand. Here you go, Doctor, he offered softly. Thank you, Harry, the doctor managed in something close to a whimper. He tossed the pills in his mouth and drained the water skin. I should be better by the time we reach the castle. Granted that Thestrals take it nice and slow.